Welcome guys to another very special episode of Be Different podcast. For once in a very long time, I am nervous sitting in front of the camera. So we decided to reintroduce Be Different podcast. You see, when Be Different started, most of you were not here, were not following us, were not subscribing. We had not even started doing video episodes. We were just doing audio. So we chose to, take this breather to reintroduce Be Different podcast to you. And please, if you're watching this and you haven't subscribed, take a moment to subscribe. So get to know us, myself, the host, and the team at Be Different, and the philosophy behind the Be Different podcast. So how is it going to work? We don't have a guest today, so I'm the one who's going to be answering the questions, and to be honest, I haven't interacted with the questions that I'm going to be asked, but we are going to do this, sail through this together with you who is watching. So karibu, and please grab a drink too so that I don't feel so anxious. I have a drink here. Thank you. Hi, Nicole.
Okay, so question one. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you like being called? Do you like Esther or do you like Nekesa? Which is which?
Well, my full name is Esther Nekesa, but I constantly introduce myself or refer to myself as Nekesa. That's the one I seem to prefer the most.
Why?
I find that Nekesa stands out. When I tell you my name is Nekesa, you'll either forget or always remember it almost immediately, but you'll know that chick who had either a name that stood out or that chick who's called Nekesa. So that's how I'd like to see it. And of course, what happened for me to start going by my name, my second name, is I was in a space where we were so many Esthers, and everyone always had to do Esther, Esther Nini, Esther Nini, Esther Nini. So when I went to, I think I was in campus, when I just chose, I'll use my second name, and that was how it became. At some point, I know my classmates didn't even know whether I had a Christian name, or even if I had it, then they didn't know what it was. So that's how and that's until date, I prefer using Nekesa to Esther.
So is that the reason why you chose Be Different as the title of your podcast?
Not necessarily. I cannot necessarily put a finger to when exactly I got this dream of having Be Different, or rather having a podcast called Be Different. I found papers that I'd written long time ago. I like writing, those people for vision boards, journals, and what have you. So I came across was it a book or a paper that I'd written that I always want to start something called Be Different. In that paper, I'd written Be Different Foundation. And I know where the dream started. I've always felt different. Why, I do not know, or how, I don't know. But I don't necessarily think I'm spectacularly different from everyone else. I just feel like I have a lot of questions that I always ask. I question rules, I question a lot of things, a lot of, are they called like rituals? Those things that people do without, you just find yourself in the cycle of life, doing things that you found other people doing. And when you stop and ask yourself, why do you always do that thing? And you have no answer, like a personal answer, personal conviction. So I found myself questioning a lot of things that we do. Simple, from why do people take maybe tea and bread in the morning? Why does the TV, the couch face the way, the way it faces in most places? And that's one of the things that made me feel convicted. I also know something about my hair. I always gravitated towards natural hair, either cutting it or just letting it be natural. And I was convicted I was smart. So when, looking good, smart like looking good. So when I walked around and people made, some funny comments and, It's my style. I didn't care whether I got someone who related to whatever I was doing or not. And I know I told myself that I'll start something called Be Different. Then I honestly didn't know, the existence of podcast and all. And at the time, I'd said this will be used to encourage young girls and women to follow their instincts. Number one, listen to your instincts. Number two, stand in your conviction. Like, just have that strength to actually voice what you actually think about and what you're convicted about any issue. And then actually go ahead and do it. And don't wait for crowds, don't wait for masses, don't wait for claps, don't wait for anyone, even that tap on the back. Don't wait for it. Just try, be different, and let's see where those diverse choices of life take us.
And so, what sets Be Different apart in a world that has countless and countless and countless of podcasts?
Well, what sets Be Different apart is it's like a platform where people who've done things differently meet, and the fact that there are viewers and you're viewing, you're watching, and you're connecting or relating, then it means there's a village or there's a community of people who think almost like there's a sense of belonging at the end of the day. So, yeah. And the authenticity. But they authentic and okay, the other things I'm thinking about, maybe I'll say them as we move on.
And how do you go about selecting guests who embody the spirit of being different?
So first, when I started the Be Different podcast, I was literally, at first I believe that everyone has a story to tell, everyone has a story to share, and I believe that everyone has something they've done differently in their lives. So I did not go for, people that are either known, famous, I did not start from up there. I actually just started with myself. Then I started with the next person. Like anyone I meet, I tell them, I host a Be Different podcast and blah, 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 blah. Could you be interested to come and share your story with us? So, what was the question?
How do you go about
selecting guests? Yeah, I guess I've answered it, because for me, I feel, yes. So for me, I believe that there's something that we have done differently in our lives, number one. Number two, so if I find that you can share your story, it has stood out, even just being a guest on the podcast and coming to share your story openly, sharing it with the world, that's big different.
So, having hosted a number of guests you've hosted, what do you think are the common misconceptions about people embracing their uniqueness? Since being different is, in essence, being unique somehow. So, how are there any myths and misconceptions about being unique?
Yes, there are misconceptions. There are myths. Number one, there's something about confidence. Okay, I've had it being said. Sometimes I feel like I'm not confident about something, but then you hear someone say, "Hey, Nex, you're so confident," and I'm like, okay. I didn't think I wouldn't describe myself as such in some instances. You know the way you can go through a season in life and you're thinking you're just doing, you're operating on ground zero, uko chini. But then as you move through life and then you hear maybe a friend comment that you're so confident, or you present yourself in this way and that way, and you're like, really? So first, when you're convicted or when you're strongly convicted about your position, and you take it and you know, live your life like that, number one, people will think, number one, you're confident. Number two, of course, there's the issue of pride. Number three, there's the issue of rebellion, because trust me, when I'm convicted about something, it's not easy for someone to change my mind. But if you put your, you know, put your opinions on the table and just, is it logically explain? I listen though, and I admit when I'm wrong. So there is that essence of pride. Oh, being stubborn. There is being stubborn, hard-headed. Yeah, I think those are the misconceptions of people who are different.
Can you share a few standout moments or insights from your podcast that have had a profound impact on you and your listeners and audio listeners?
Yeah. I've had several instances where people come and share, and you're like, wow, that story left me in pieces. There are two that stand out. So there's one episode where we hosted single moms, and they chose to come with their kids. That was not in our plan. We reached out to them, we called them, asked them to come. There were two people. One I'd never met, one it's someone I know. So one of the parents said, hey, I want to come with my child. Is that okay? I was like, okay. Then when they came, I had to ask the other parent. So the other parent is coming with their child. Do you mind coming with yours? Like, no. So for me, that was a crazy, one of those really crazy episodes, because the kids really shared. One family is older than the other, and the younger family was very emotional, and they talked between the mother and the child, and they were both girls. Between the mother and the child, they really talked like they've never openly communicated before. There's that one, and then there's another one where there was a parent who has children living with disability. That one left me in pieces, because yeah, she shared her story, and it was, I think I stayed with it for days. I was just feeling the weight of that story. I was walking with it. It almost, I don't know, I felt that mom. So yeah, those were my most outstanding. I don't know the number of episodes, but they're there. There's the single mothers, the happenstance of single motherhood, and there's the one I've talked about. It's pretty recent. It's called I Was in Denial. It captioned I was in denial that I was a mother to PWD children, boys actually. Thank you.
And have you noticed any commonalities between your guests, any principles that guide your guests that are common between this guest and this one and this one?
Well, number one, there's a very strong aspect of healing and growth, because for someone to actually come out and share, actually there's one that I can openly mention. There's a young university student who came and shared her story of being pregnant in her first year, and she was still in it. The baby was not even 1 year old yet, and how she expressed herself, and how she talked about her experiences, and how because we talk before recording, after recording, and how we talked after that, recording that episode. You could tell that, yeah, even if it's someone who's gone through something that would have broken them, shattered them, there's a way they find strength. If you see anyone who's willing to come out and share their story, whether, of course, it's a risk. There's the risk of, judgment, negative comments, blah 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 blah. You don't know who's watching, from family, friends, and strangers. But there's a very strong aspect of growth. There's a very strong aspect of healing. I don't know how else to characterize that growth, but there's a word I feel like I'm missing.
Be different is about
This is what, okay,
uniqueness and individuality.
Yeah.
And you've mentioned that, part of the things you hope to do or you hope to showcase is healing and growth, the commonalities in your guests. So the question is, from episodes in the podcast, what are those insights or moments that inspired you in matters resilience and personal growth?
Well, yeah, there are two. Hey, I've mentioned that mom who has PWD kids and the way she told her story. When they actually went their separate ways with the father of the kids, when one of the kids was very young. She'd just gotten from hospital, delivered, and then they had to go their separate ways. That one was like really stuck with me because I have two kids, and imagining the confusion that someone is at, or that as the mother, the confusion in that season. Postpartum is no joke. Then imagine you go your separate ways with your man. So many people I know have had this experience, but that's crazy. So, and then secondly, so I really picked the issue of resilience from her. Number two, that chick told me she doesn't even, I don't know how many hours she sleeps. She's a fighter. She's really fought. She's really worked hard to make ends meet. Having kids with special needs is not a joke. And yeah, that was crazy. Apart from that, there's another story that inspired me, and actually even made me, okay, it's not like I didn't have plans to start therapy, but made me take seriously the issue of therapy and starting to attend therapy. So that's the aspect of personal growth, because I had this chick over who was so mature in whatever it is that she was going through at the time, and I was like, wow. And I picked that up, and she said, yeah, of course you should go to therapy and do what. Yeah, it's really a nice experience, because every time you see me here with a guest, there's a before talk and there's an after. Some people, we finish recording, and sometimes that's when the real conversation starts, because now all the questions are the questions that I ask and that I learn from people. Really, it's an asset, and it's a learning curve.
So since the world is currently evolving, whatever happened yesterday or last year is not something that will happen today or tomorrow. So how do you envision the future of Be Different and its role in celebrating uniqueness and diversity?
It's interesting that you ask that. And the reason why we even thought to do this is because I feel like the Be Different podcast is getting a life of its own, and it's evolving. It's actually evolving, getting a life of its own. It's very interesting that sometimes I actually get so discouraged. Sometimes I'm like, why am I even doing this? I want to give up. I want to do what? And then I meet someone and they're like, okay, I watch your podcast. Can you invite me? Like, some people actually ask to be invited over. And then some people comment and really encourage me. Like, I watch. There's a lady who once told me, and it was pretty recent, she told me, if you have 3 views, one of them is always mine. Like, I really follow you and watch watch every episode that you release. And I felt so encouraged, because sometimes we do podcasts, we release, and I don't even have the energy of marketing or sharing the links. I'm just like, yeah, we've done it, it's there, it's out there, it'll get a life of its own or something. But it's just the the curves, the waves, the seasons, because I've realized it's also very personal. Sometimes I interview guests and then I find that whatever it is that they're talking about, I feel like this is just a healing tool for me and so many others out there, but it starts with me. It's like, I want to use the example of a preacher, but it's like a preacher who finds themselves, who preaches but they are preaching more to themselves than to the congregation. Yeah.
Okay, so what advice would you give to someone who's struggling to embrace their own uniqueness and they want to make a positive change in their life?
I feel like that question has assumed things. Ati, what's the positive advice that I would give to someone?
Not positive advice.
Oh, sorry. The advice.
Which
advice
would you give to someone who's struggling to embrace their own uniqueness and they want to make a positive change in their life?
Okay. So you want to embrace your own uniqueness? Embrace it. I mean, I feel like, not just feel, I know life is short. We have seen life is short. We have seen there's a lot of beauty out here that when we constrict ourselves in doing something, all of us, umezaliwa, you're born, you are fed, you go to school, we all want to look for employment. We are soon seeing that is such a struggle. Okay, now there's the aspect of, okay, let's do business. Then there's a flood of businesses, same kind of business, because one person said, well, I went to China and brought goods. And now everyone is going to China to bring in goods. I mean, so there's I feel like we are just, that is like living 20% and yet we've been given 100%. Like, really sit with yourself. But there's a very high level of self-awareness that you need if you want to be different. Number one, you have to like really take time with yourself. Ask yourself the hard question. You know, the hard question is like, do I want to do my life the way everyone else is doing it? Number one. Number two, even the simple most basic ni ile story ya get money, buy land, build a house, move in with your people. Is that everyone's dream? Is that what you want for yourself, for your life, for your family? Maybe you don't want that. Maybe you want something else. Explore it. That's what I'm saying. As in, there's the you'll hear someone saying, I've never believed in that thing of doing ABC, but then so what do you believe in? Have you ever thought about it? Have you ever really sat and questioned and researched, and found out viable other options? What more is there to do? And are you able to do it? Are you able to explore? Are you afraid of doing it? Are you even afraid of voicing what you really think life should be about? So for me, take time with yourself. Take time with yourself. Learn what you really want. Then go out and do it. By the way, there's only so much you can find out. Go out and do it. Kama ni Mount Kenya unataka kupanda, go out, plan for it, go and hike that Mount Kenya. You'll hurt in the process, you'll know how it feels, you do whatever. Then you move to your next dream, your next, bucket list, your next thing. By the time you're done with this life, you've emptied. You've emptied yourself, followed all your two desires, you've done this, you've done that. In the process, you've met people who maybe thought like you. Some people will share and tell you, Mount Kenya, it's not all that, or it's like this and like that. Maybe in the process, you'll change your mind. Maybe you won't. You'll like, let me go and experience it for myself. It's as simple as that, by the way. So I think we are so afraid of questioning ourselves. We are so afraid of sitting with ourselves. Actually, that's sitting with ourselves and asking ourselves those hard questions. It's like we don't even have the time. Yeah. Have I answered? I feel like I've really answered.
Yes, you have. So you've touched on something about questioning, and earlier you mentioned that you have always been that person who questions norms or the way of life, so to speak. So, excuse me, being in a society that discourages that type of behavior, they'll term you as, being rebellious and arrogant and all that. So, what message do you hope that your podcast sends to your listeners?
Do I hope? What message do I hope the podcast sends to listeners? Yeah, of course it will come out as rebellious, and it will come off as arrogant, right? It will come off as arrogant, it will come off as rebellious. But then again, honestly, guys, like, how much longer can you live under societal, because society is so loud. How much longer, how much more can you take from society? Because yes, they question, they point fingers, there are comments that have been made over and over again. My message, or the message that I would like for Be Different to be relaying out there, is live your life and live it fully. Be very aware of who you are. It's not easy, and there's a day I wrote somewhere, I think I wrote on my social media pages, that I feel like self-awareness is the highest form of worship. Hey, those are those things that come when you're in the shower, when you are alone in the shower, when you're musing there. I feel like we are multi-layered, we are deep, we are so huge, we are big, we are mighty, dare I say. But we only discover very little of ourselves. Honestly, if I was to take the time and concentrate on myself, I know some people say, oh, it will come off as selfishness, but my point is there is so much of me to learn, to discover, and to start living out. A section of, you see the way you say, I want to hit the gym, keep up with my whatever schedules, drink water, you should add there, spend time with yourself, or just explore things that you want. That thing we say about me time. Like, so you discovered something about yourself. Maybe you say, I love this and this type of music. So can I take some time out of my day and just listen to one song that I really, really like? Or will it be squeezing ngoma gani nashika? That's the one I want to listen to. Do you sometimes, it's something as simple as that. Music, just exploring your tiny, desires. That small voice that, I don't know whether everyone has it. I know I have it. So, but that small voice, there's something it says, and you do that one step, maybe just a day, it fills your tank. The rest of the time, by the way, I'm not excluding society and giving of yourself. I said I'm a mother, so I have two people that I have to keep thinking about, hustling for, serving, and doing all these things. I have a job, I'm employed, I have this, I have the things I have to think about in a day are so many. I have, and the things that I have to attend to in a day are so many that my point is we forget ourselves, and we forget that process of self-evolution. By the way, I feel like some of us change without realizing we are changing. Because unaona vile hii kugongwa na life, unagongwa. By the time you realize that I picked this attitude or I picked this behavior because something happened to me somewhere, you are not even aware that you're changing. So that's the whole essence of take some time and sit with yourself. I really like that when I realize I'm changing, I voice it. because I feel like if I don't voice it to the people around me, watanipatanga huko, uliona tu hai huyu siku hizi, and you hear those comments, random comments, you know, when you live aware that, hey, by the way, my belief about this has changed, or something happened today, or I learned something today, I learned this and I think it's a very cool idea and I want to explore it. I've remembered a story about a lady, let me just share it. Actually, she's not ever been on the podcast too. A lady who got married to a professional man who one day then went ahead and became a pastor. Na alikuja tu akamwambia, me, I've quit my job and I feel like, you know, God has called me. I know those stories are out there. But that mama, so many years later, she's a pastor's wife and I don't think she's ever recovered, because she was like, hey, baby, me, see life tulikuwa tume envision, something like that.
Final question.
Yay!
If you weren't the host or the founder of Be Different, what would make you tune in week after week to the podcast?
Oh, goodness. Wow. I feel like that's a setup question. So if I weren't the host of Be Different, what would make me tune in week after week? Okay, a week, after every 2 weeks. What will make me watch the podcast and follow? It will be the authenticity. I know I mentioned, I'll repeat it because nothing beats authenticity for me. Number 2, you see the way we say when you read books, you travel the world through the books. So I feel like when you hear people's stories, you live. Like you live through their experiences. When I've heard people's stories, I feel like even if I haven't experienced that thing, I've experienced it through someone else. So I feel like human beings, when people share their stories, they open up to us a world we never thought either we could live in. Someone shares a story and gives you a perspective of life you never thought existed. And there's the growth. I mean, there is the growth. There it is. As in, you won't be a stagnant person. Maybe say you live in, I don't know, I wanted to say Kibra, but I feel like using that example. Maybe you live in, let me use another place. Maybe you live in Kawangware. Born in Kawangware, live in Kawangware, maybe you guys are landlords even. And then your father leaves you the places, the houses, and you stay there and you continue taking care of the houses in Kawangware. You stay there, you live, you know every hole in Kawangware, you know how it's developing, how there were no houses here, shops here, nini. You've seen it all. But when you hear a story of someone else, maybe let's just use hapo mbele tu, Hurlingham ama Yaya, and you hear a story of someone else who's been living in Hurlingham, it's like, wow, I always pass that Hurlingham maybe by bus and I've never experienced that story, or I've never seen that side of life. So for me, it's life, it's living. We've finished. The questions are over, guys. So wow, ooh, that was so scary. I hope you've learned a little bit more about the Be Different KE podcast. If you have any questions, please add them on the comment section. If you feel like sharing anything of your thoughts, whether you've learned something, whether you feel like now you've gotten where Be Different is growing and going, kindly please join us, be part of our community, and let's keep talking, let's keep sharing. Thank you so much for tuning in and have a good one.